environmental. It worked.
Roll call, everyone is present. Approved minutes for March 10th, regular city council meeting.
I have a correction on the minutes. Olivia Schmidt is not here last week.
Got that, Bill? Everything else look good, John?
I move to approve the regular city council meeting minutes from March 10th with deletion of Olivia Smith as roll call.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
I
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Consent agenda. Approved payments of disbursements. Approved Parks and Recreation Manager hire. Approved conditional use permit. 126 North Kingston, and approved interim use permit at 402 West Grove.
Can you explain the two additions to the consent? What is that?
Yes, Casey, do you want to go through those?
Sure. So we've got two items from last Monday night's planning commission. Item C there, conditional use is a solar permit application on a downtown B1 business building. It's a conditional use by ordinance. So that one there, they applied for a solar array on the flat roof of the building and then also on the south wall of the building. So we actually denied the solar structure on the south side for a couple of reasons. It's in the copy of that application, and then I have 7 facts if I need. So basically, what you're approving is a roof structure, solar mount on that one. And then letter D, interim use permit 402 West Grove. That's the old elementary school building. In 2017, the city had granted that property owner an 8-year interim use permit for indoor storage. I'm not quite sure the length of time on that one, but we typically do 3 to 4 years. So planning commission recommends we go with the 4-year approval of continuing that indoor storage at that facility.
Anybody got any questions?
Is he, yeah, Casey, is he keeping up with keeping junk, I guess, or the trash off the building or the yards and stuff?
Yeah, so there's 2 separate properties there. The old school's one of them, and then the taxidermy shop's another one. I've been working with them on and off. We haven't had a whole lot of movement lately. It's an item we are addressing separately from this one. But yeah, as far as your original question, the school property's been kept up pretty good here.
Okay,
Yeah.
good. Well, I see no reason to approve it, not to approve the consent agenda. So I'll approve the consent agenda.
I'll second that.
Any discussion? All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Public comment? Fire.
Last city council meeting, we had talked about an interest in South Kingston Street being involved with Founder's Day and closing the street specifically to do Emerald Lane presents a Crazy Days on Kingston Street. And the recommendation, our first step was to go to Matt on the Founders Committee, which I did have a great meeting with him, and they are in support of us being involved with Founders Day. So I guess I need to know the next step as far as the possibility of closing South Kingston off for the 2 blocks, from the stoplight down those 2 blocks to, what is that road? And we have 20+ vendors committed to joining us with a whole bunch of activities. We would be going from 9 till 2. So for setup, tents in the street. The vendors are responsible for all of their tables, chairs, tents, so they're on their own. And so the streets would have to be closed for setup from like 8 and then tear down till 3. So I guess I need to know what the next step would be for us to get city support and approval.
Sure. So really, the only agenda item that the city council ever sees about Founder's Day is just that street closures, which I usually bring in April or May. Sounds like, I mean, well, I'll have no problem just bringing that street closure item to the next meeting, and then we can just take it off the consent agenda and make it a discussion item. And then we can, share more thoughts about that specific street closure, because the other ones we do kind of automatically every year, but
Okay.
so.
And I should mention too that we have the support of all businesses on Kingston Street as well.
And was that including the liquor store?
Correct.
Did you talk to them?
Yes.
Okay.
And they're super excited to do something as well.
Will you guys need any big power strung through the streets if this all works out? Or
Nope.
nothing like that?
Nope.
So I'll just bring this back to the next meeting then.
We appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, we're very excited.
Yeah. Anything we can add to our community events is awesome.
Yeah,
Great job.
all
Thank you.
in addition to.
Yes, I mean, that's how we look at it too, is it's not taking away from, it's just adding, and we'll be drawing from outside of the community. And I feel like a different additional age group and some new.
Yeah, we're gonna bring people to town that want to come to town. That you guys are doing this.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. Anything else? We're good? All right. Casey?
I'm sorry, I did want to mention one thing. I guess that approved Parks and Rec manager hire sounds too good to be true. That's quite a guy after looking at his resume.
My read on that is somebody that looks like they want to make a career out of this, and from my discussion with, after the interview, just kind of asked him basically that same question, what's the deal? But, so I think my read on it is don't see manager on that resume anywhere, and so, I'm really excited to get somebody that's bringing a lot of education and a lot of experience, a lot of time with the YMCA and the lacrosse pool program to help us out with the pool this summer, so, I'm excited about that. I really am. I think that will be, a change in direction a little bit, but at the same time, I think that we're always looking for whatever that answer is that we can't find on the pool. I mean, it's horrible. It's disappointing, and it hurts when you get, when you hear about, I guess, the pool season not going the way you wanted it to, and not even a swimmer. So it's kind of tough, but yeah, I'm excited about this pool season. I think that's a great addition. So I'm really happy about that.
Casey?
But don't really have a whole lot to report on Public Works. We had a nasty snowfall everybody had to deal with. We were, doing quite a bit of street sweeping ahead of that, so that's kind of been keeping those guys busy, cutting trees again this week, trimming trees. Other than that, pretty well finished up our 2025 Public Works project list, so we'll be focusing a lot of our time this summer into the fall in our parks and recreation areas. Everything from, getting new wood fiber in the playgrounds and wood chips around the flower beds around town. We'll be picking up a little bit of the work that some of the groups have helped out with in the past as far as maintaining flower spaces, things like that. But yeah, got a lot of repairs up in the Veterans Playground this year, so we got some parts on order there. Ball fields, add a few loads of lime, kind of get things shaped up, better drainage. Warming house, we got to finish painting and siding. Concession stand, kind of a rebuild we got budgeted for that guy. A lot of painting, cleaning things up, pretty much every park location. So got that pretty well ready to go. Other than that, that's kind of what we're working on, getting materials ordered and lining things up, and hope for the best with the weather this summer, so we can get a lot of this stuff tied up.
Just a few short ones. One is I applied to be a board member for the South League of Municipalities, a group that I talk a lot about. They had an opening, and they're actually going to be naming somebody to that spot at the meeting that host on April 29th, the Four Seasons that the council is invited to, so fingers crossed, that'd be cool. I'm gonna be out of town Thursday and Friday this week, and then we had a meeting last Monday about the roundabout, again, a lot more discussion about that. We are still hammering very, very hard on Warrior as a result of that project, or as part of it. We saw some cost estimates from the bypasses and things that are planned, and they range from 178,000 to 665,000. And I think those numbers are low. So that's one that we'll keep doing that every month, and I'll keep saying those same things. But we're learning quite a bit about that project. Just the size and the scope of the 76 resurfacing is one that is not getting a whole lot of attention because the roundabout is so popular and beloved by all. So that people just don't have time to talk about 76, but I think that will be more or less seismic for this area, and just what that will take to get to detour the people between here and Houston is a massive undertaking. And I think that's one that we'll have to pay a lot of attention to. Thankfully, we got another year plus to plan for that one. And then I was going to touch on lifeguards. We've got, I think we're up to 6 applications, and then some interest in the assistant manager position as well. So we'll hit that a little bit harder with the Parks and Recreation manager on board now. And then there was a meeting last Monday for the Minnesota Driftless Hiking Trail. They had about 30 or 40 people there, a lot of good attention. And they will also be appearing at that meeting on April 29th. So that's been picking up a lot of steam. It's been a really fun project to be a part of. And they're always looking for more people that are interested in walking the trails and interested in being a part of their group. But that's something that I know it was a dream for a long time, but the work has been very rapid and very recent. And so that's one that I hope that we start seeing a positive effect from very soon. And then the housing court team and those meetings are picking up again. And then we've been learning some interesting stuff about some possible child care grants out there and some concepts that they're trying in other cities. On Monday, we're going to learn more about a concept of the state program where they actually will build a house that is like 20% residents, 80% daycare, things like that. Just trying new ways to get more daycare facilities out there. And then in the month of April 24th, the grant for the housing project that I've been talking to you guys about, that grant is due. And so I plan to have that submitted and everything. That's it.
Thank you. New business, civil engineer interviews. Here we go. You all ready? I think we're gonna put them outside or.
Yeah, so we had 4 firms. One could not make it, so we've got 3. That would be WHKS, SEH, and Davey Engineering. So we're going to interview one at a time. I don't really know a great method for determining who goes first, but I think you were here first, so we'll do that. And then so I'll have the other firms we got in the lobby, and we'll try to keep these to about 15 minutes each. So we'll try to hum through it. What'd you 3 sign up for? Yeah.
Bolton will make it. That's a good choice.
There you feel very strong. Just the way I've done this in the past.
Thank you.
It's a lot to digest.
Thank
you.
Thanks, you guys.
Thank you.
So,
Bye, Brian.
always have that.
Good to see you, buddy.
Big guys this night.
You and Jeremy, just we gotta go through this.
I wasn't that confused until I started reading everything.
See, you gotta not read them.
I read all 4 of them this afternoon.
And you really should.
All right, do I just start with an introduction and then you move into questions after that? or-
Yeah, we'll try to have you take about 5 minutes to go through the high points of your proposal and who you are,
Okay.
and then leave the most time for the Q&A.
Okay, sounds good. Well, evening, everybody. My name is Aaliyah Berg. I'm a project manager for Short Elliott and Hendrickson, SEH for short. I work out of the La Crosse office. I'm originally from the Twin Cities area, but relocated to Houston County here, and I've been a Brownsville resident for the last 10 years. My husband, my children, they're all pureblood Houston County natives. Our friends, family, and ourselves, we all live, work, shop, or play here in Caledonia. So Caledonia is very near and dear to our heart. We are strong supporters of the community, and we want to see it grow and maintain. I chose to be an engineer to be outside, a civil engineer anyways. And I like to see a project start out as a concept, move through construction, and then the piece that I love the most is once a project is completed and it's successfully completed, just that gratification that you get from the community that they're all happy with the final product. I've been a full-time engineer for 13 years now, and my experience includes 10 years with Wisconsin DOT. I started out as a highway designer and a construction inspector. So I've personally done the highway design myself. I've seen it out in construction. I know how it works. So all of that experience translates to overseeing projects. I became a project manager with Wisconsin DOT, specifically overseeing counties, cities, towns, and villages and their projects. And then I came to SEH. I've been with them for about 3 years now, and I still exclusively work with local municipalities, focusing on highways, bridges, trail projects, everything from small resurfacing projects to major reconstruction projects, including replacement of sewer and sanitary and water lines underneath the roadway, including also working with other utility companies like gas, power, electric, coordinating with them with all of their utility relocation plans as well. Currently, I provide on-call engineering services to 4 Wisconsin counties, and that includes everything from design services to either highway or architectural inspections, grant writing, and a lot more than that. It's really, the county just picks up the phone and asks, hey, do you do this? And I said, yes, I do. And I can help you out whatever way that you need.
Is there anything you don't do?
There are a
Doesn't sound
handful
like
of
it.
things that we don't do, but we work with a lot of other firms to supplement those services, specifically like species surveys. We do some of those, but there's so many variety of species and habitat that we have to pull in specialists frequently for that. I don't know if you guys run into that yet within your projects, but
Big brown bats.
Yeah, for the roundabout. Anytime we work with the state, I think is a butter of the time. They've already taken care of those projects.
yeah, the loophole with that is just clear all the trees in the winter time.
Yeah.
You're good to go.
Well, I can't find the bats, but they know they're out there.
Yep, so that's a little bit about myself. As far as some information about SEH, we've been in service for 97 years. We've got over 900 employees located in 35 offices nationwide. We're made up of engineers, architects, planners, and scientists. We've got 9 offices in Wisconsin, 10 here in Minnesota, and 2 in Iowa. And the 3 closest to you guys is La Crosse, Wisconsin, where I'm headquartered out of, Rochester, Minnesota, and then Mason City, Iowa. All of this, all of the size of our company, this is a benefit to you. It helps keep your projects running on time. Just if we have some staff that aren't available to do work, there's many other places that we can pull staff from that are fluent in the same design features or grant writing that you may need services in. I would be your primary contact as the city engineer. And then if you would turn to page 1 of your proposals, it's the first yellow tab. We have a list of all the services that we provide there, but just to kind of highlight a couple of them: highway design, wastewater, water engineering, transportation planning, and funding services. And then we complete these similar services for over 60 communities between Minnesota and Wisconsin right now. So we're very experienced in providing this kind of service. From discussions we've had with you, it sounds like your major concerns are roadway design and construction costs. And then if you turn to page 5, the second yellow tab, we've already looked through possible funding programs that we think Caledonia could benefit from. So those are all listed there. We are completely aware how expensive projects can be and how much of how that cost of a project can hinder the city on actually getting it built. So our goal is, not only identify the funding sources, but also secure them for you to help reduce the city's expenses. We have a whole grant team that works on these grant programs every single day. They specialize in writing them. And that they track when the announcements come, and then the key things that make a municipality successful for securing that grant. So as far as grant writing goes, there's many different ways to handle it. It sounds like, Jake, you do a lot of that for the city already. So you can either keep that moving forward and we can prove it and, provide some positive feedback that would maybe possibly make it stand out more. Depending on the scale of the grant, or if it's something you haven't done before, we could also write it for you, or a hybrid somewhere in between. We can collaborate together where you guys do most of the writing and we provide the estimate. I mean, it's ultimately up to you guys, how you ever want to try to save money or maximize the funds without being in significant debt to whatever firm you end up hiring on. So we just want to build that collaborative effort and be conscious about what you guys want to spend the money on.
Do we do some questions?
Sure.
Are
Yeah,
you
go
good?
right ahead.
Are you good?
Yeah, I can keep going, but yeah, we can move into the question.
2 minutes longer. What sets you apart from other firms as the best choice for the city of Caledonia?
I think one of the biggest things is our office is right here in La Crosse. We're 30 minutes away. My house is 20 minutes away. I know the area. I know a lot of the people that live here and work here already. I recognize some of the pain points. And when you guys need something, when you make that phone call, I'm gonna answer the phone. And if I can't get an answer for you or don't have an answer right away, I will find it for you. And that's one of the biggest things I think that all of the clients that I've worked with, they really appreciate how responsive I am. There's not a linger. It's just a smooth process.
Case, Jake, you got anything?
Do you want to go through all three of yours?
You want to do all three first? All right. Yeah. All right, perfect. Cost effectiveness is the primary reason for this search. How does your firm prioritize cost effectiveness for municipalities?
So our biggest thing in cost effectiveness is accurately scoping a project. We know every single project is different based on the scale of it, the level of involvement that needs to be with it. So before even doing contract negotiations, we would sit down and go and have a scoping meeting to figure out what exactly you guys are looking for, if it's just a straight resurfacing project or if it's a full reconstruct. Because both of those scales and the level of effort that goes into them is significantly different. And then the other big thing that plays into the cost of a project is whether or not there's federal or state oversight, because then there's a whole another level of effort and documentation that needs to be completed. So just having an accurate scope up front makes the cost effectiveness part of it. And then the other thing we like to do with our projects as well is not only have monthly progress meetings with the clients just to keep you guys up to date on everything that's going on, or if there's hiccups that come with, just to keep you abreast of everything, but also doing 30, 60, 90% reviews. And along with those reviews would go include construction estimates as well, just so we can show you, accurately show you how that project is progressing, and if the budget is increasing, why it would be increasing. A lot of things that people don't think about is inflation rates. I mean, now the inflation rates have stabilized right about 3% or so for the last 3 years. But the other things that some people don't think about is, there's a lot of people are getting wage increases, there's wage shortages, material costs are going up. It's all those other factors. So just the market rates in general that you got to take into consideration when you're estimating a project.
How does your firm advocate for and pursue funding for municipal projects?
So as far as pursuing the municipal projects, we'll help out with any kind of grant funding, whether it's you guys submitting it or us doing it. We've got a close tab on all the grant programs that are happening, and if we are aware of a project that you guys want to pursue, we'll be watching the different funding programs that they come up, and we'll assist you guys with doing those. Some other things to note is that, once a grant is secured, there's always opportunity for change management to maybe potentially get additional funding, or you can combine multiple grants into one project to help reduce some of the costs that the city would have to pay.
All tough ones. Tell us about a time you made a mistake in the engineering field on a project and what you did to correct it.
So on one of the projects, it was a partial reconstruction project in the city of La Crosse. And during construction, the contractor came across a old foundation that was underneath the road. Nobody knew about it. None of the borings identified it. And so we did a little bit of digging on how to remedy that situation. And with that, after talking with the city of La Crosse, they found old records that, that foundation was supposed to be walled off and filled in and abandoned. So then we had to work with the contractor to get that scope of work included in their contract, but it ultimately is ended up on the resident to pay for that, because they were supposed to do it initially, but they never finished it.
The success of a street project really, I guess in our eyes, comes down to the representative of the project. A lot of firms choose to have interns or inexperienced staff on site. What is your guys' approach?
So we like to have at least one construction inspector that has the experience there. And then we also like to supplement with other support staff, whether it's, and it's totally dependent on the scale of the project. For example, if it's a major reconstruction project, we're going to have a person that's got years and years of experience with this. And then we might have a second representative that's got maybe 5 years of experience that's trying to step into that lead role. And then another intern to help with just the day-to-day tracking the contractor and the different construction activities. So that's how we typically approach a construction project. You just have varied levels, and it's all geared around to the scale of the project. The other thing too, I think, which makes a big difference, is just the public involvement. Whoever the leader is out there, just making sure the residents are aware of what's going on, whether that's weekly construction meetings that they also get invited to, so they can keep tabs on everything, or just sharing their contact information. So if they have questions, they know who to contact, or if something goes wrong in their house, they have that phone number. They can say, hey, I don't have any water, what happened? You can get that issue fixed right away.
It's good to hear. I mean, we like to be involved, probably more than a lot of communities do. But if we don't have a good inspector on the job, ultimately we end up spending a lot of our time. So having an experienced staff out there means a lot to us here.
I was just curious, you were saying on this project, you'd have like 3 people. You've got the inspector, and then somebody that's maybe had 5 years experience, and then somebody that's training. Do they all 3 get paid?
All 3 of them get paid, yes.
By us? Or by the project?
They get paid, yeah, either, it's whoever the contract's with. So if the contract's with the city, yes. But we would gear it towards the budget that's in place. If the city has an intern that you guys have on staff that you kind of want to learn the background on construction, that your own city intern could be that intern instead of our own personal staff too. So there's different variations on how we can help reduce that construction oversight cost and just make it more reasonable. The other thing too is, yes, if we're recommending 3 staff be on site, they don't need to be on site all the time, especially if nothing's happening. The biggest things that you want, all the staff on site are is anytime there's underground work, especially when they're backfilling, just getting compaction done right. Otherwise, you're going to have all sorts of settlement spots in the pavement later on, or if they're not laying the pipe correctly, you're going to have your joints are going to leak, and that's just going to lead to other problems down the road. So it's tailoring the oversight to which construction activities are going on at that time and the scale of the project.
So far, at least in my time, here, most of our projects have been 2 to 8 blocks at a time, probably one person. But yeah, just say we've got out half the town, we do looking at multiple people. So, yeah. All right. I guess with cost in mind, does SEH ever do a not to exceed option for design or construction administration?
Yes, we do those. Yep.
It's something we've had in the past. We don't have that currently right now, but I think it always gives people a sense of comfort to know that we're not, as long as we don't change the scope of work, we're not going to be blowing the budget.
Perfect.
Do they, typically, if you bid it that way, the bid comes in a little higher?
This would just be for their services, not so much the construction.
Yeah, we do all sorts of contracts, whether it's the actual cost not to exceed or lump sum. Like you said, as long as the scope doesn't change, we're kind of locked into that price.
But hogging up the time, anybody else?
Think we're done?
I don't know.
Good,
I
John?
just had a quick question. Under your rates, which category of worker is responsible for grant writing?
That,
So on page 20 of what the hospital is.
that would fall under one of our planners. So we've got 3 different tiered planners there, senior planner, graduate planner. So depending on the type of grant, they used to be called raise grants, they just switched it to build grants. Those are very large, difficult applications to complete. So we're gonna put a higher level staff on that just because they've done it before, they know the questions they ask, they know the trigger words that make them stand out.
Do you estimate your success rate in getting grants?
Yes, yes, we do. We've got a very good success rate. I personally have not written any grants for any of the municipalities. I've assisted. So I mostly work with the counties as of right now. So I'm very in tune with the rural grants and the bridge grants. So I helped them put together the construction estimates for all their grants and, kind of write the generic language that they need to include in there. And then after the grant is received, the ones that I have not assisted with, sometimes the estimates were too low to begin with. Either they didn't estimate it correctly, or they, forgot to account for inflation rates. I've had an extremely good track record getting additional funding for communities.
On a rate sheet, principal is 215 to 300. What is your actual rate?
My rate's 200.
These other people that would be coming for our projects, the other 2, are they coming from La Crosse? Are they coming from Rochester? Are they coming from Mason City?
For construction inspection, they would be coming from the La Crosse office.
Gotcha.
Yep.
We good, guys? We let her go?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Am I good to go for the night, or do you expect all of us to stick around till the end?
I think you're good to go for the night. You are.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you guys so much for your time tonight.
WHPS.
Yes, I do.
Yes, you guys are up.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
No worries.
Thank you very much.
Yep, you're welcome.
Stacy.
Go see you.
Yeah, wherever you
They don't want to
want.
block the camera.
All right. Have a good night.
What project is that? You just want to introduce yourselves first, tell us about yourselves, and then 5 minutes, Jake,
Yeah, take 5 minutes to go.
and then we'll do like 10 minutes with the questions.
Sounds good.
Sound good?
Whatever you guys. So that's part of it. So Tim Rishka with WHKS, office manager, principal with the firm. Then I joined the firm a year out of college in 2002. It's been a great experience. One of the things that I really love about it is that I get to do this on a day-to-day basis. Coming in and working with the public, working with city councils, working with Jake and Casey, and trying to figure out what is your guys' needs? What's the needs that you guys, what's the problem, and really getting at what is the true issue that we need to solve, and then coming up with a practical solution. That's one of the things that we really pride ourselves on is not the one size fits all, not something new and shiny all the time. That there's a lot of times where you start to talk through and figure out, what is the problem and how do we fix it in the most economical sense, but getting the lifespan that we expect out of it, realizing that we're working with you guys as stewards of the taxpayer dollars. And that's something that I greatly enjoy. It was fun when we talked to Casey and Jake a couple times earlier and trying to figure out what are the problems, what are the solutions that we need to have, and talking through that. And I look forward to that opportunity. That's where I get purpose and joy out of my life, is when I'm getting to help solve those problems and figuring out, like I said, not just what's it going to take to fix it, but what's the practical solution along the way. So, sorry, that was a long introduction to myself. So,
be a little more brief than that. I'm Blake Stiller. I'm a design engineer at WHKS. I have been with the company since I graduated from South Dakota State 2 years ago. From a small town, still live in a small town. I'm most comfortable here. I like working with small town people and finding solutions for people from small towns. So,
Ready for the first question?
Sure. Yeah.
All right. What sets you apart from other firms as the best choice for the city of Caledonia?
That's a great question. I think one of the things that we strive at and we do a very good at is being responsive to your needs. So we strive to return phone calls within an hour, return emails within a day. That is our standard that we have across the board, is that we want to be responsive. Technically speaking, we're the same. Everybody can do the same technical stuff. What sets us apart is being responsive and bringing that practicality that I talked about too. There's a lot of us in our office that serve as city engineers. My guys always, and it's so true, is that our number one people on our call list isn't our spouse, it's not our parents, it's public works directors and city administrators. Those are the people that we're always engaging with and talking with. And we want to be that trusted resource that Casey and Jake have a problem that comes up on a Saturday night or whenever that is, that they're calling us and bringing us in. We think that brings you the best solution that you can, is that when all of us sit and think about it together and try and solve that problem and come up with what is truly at the heart of it and figuring that out. And I think that's the key for us, is that responsiveness and providing that service. And that's one of our values. We have two values that we say we don't bend on, and that is be of service and people first. And we do live by those values across the board, of that we don't take on a job or a role unless we can provide those two things. And we feel that we can be responsive and be of service to you guys, and that's our number one thing that we're going to bring to the table.
Perfect.
and just to add to that, the responsiveness doesn't stop with the city engineer. It goes all the way down to the people designing your projects, the people you see here observing, inspecting the jobs to be built. It doesn't stop at the top. It's been instilled, yeah, it started at the top, but it's been instilled all the way down to me and everybody else in between.
Cost effectiveness is the primary reason for this search. How does your firm prioritize cost effectiveness for municipalities?
Well, we have an in-depth conversation with your staff. When we start to scope a project and we start to talk about what is the problem, what's going on out there, we really want to dig into the details of why are you needing this fix, and what are we trying to accomplish with this? Is this a small repair that it needs to get through a year, 2, 5 years, or is it something that we need to make sure that it's gonna be, a fix for the next 20 or 50 years. And it really comes down to is digging into those details of the why. What's happening down in there? What are we trying to accomplish with this? And it's something that a lot of times as we're digging through projects and having a conversation, we talked about this both times when we talked, is that we're not afraid to have a conversation with your local contractors, to bring them into the mix too, to make sure that what we're thinking about, sometimes, for instance, Casey's got a problem. We've got an idea for a solution to that. Bringing that contractor in that brings us, how do we solve the problem in the most economical way? Because sometimes we know what we need to get, but we've got an end result that we need to go to, but we don't know how we need to get there. And that's what I mean is that being those partners with, we serve a lot of the communities in the area here. We know your local players that you're dealing with. And that's a key part, is those relationships, because that does bring a cost-effective piece to this, is that, I might have a great solution, but it's going to cost you $100,000 to do it. Having that conversation, we knock that down to 75. That's the type of relationship that we want to have, is that way we bring that to the table, so that way we get the fix that you need, and being practical about that, and not just making it a nice new shiny thing and the best solution, because sometimes the best solution is the most costly solution. But we also don't want to make sure that we don't give you, the least or the most economical solution if it needs to last longer. And that's where having that conversation and trying to figure out what's the problem, and how do we solve it.
How does your firm advocate for and pursue funding for municipal projects?
Sure. So I'm going to point right down the road to La Crescent. We've been advocating with the city of La Crescent for the Wagon Wheel Trail. We've worked with them over the last 15 years on multiple phases for that. We worked to get across the backwaters of the Mississippi with phase 1. We worked to get to the bridge on phase 2. A couple of years ago, you might have noticed a little bridge that went over the highway there. We worked with city folks to get MnDOT Transportation Alternative funding. We went and met with State Representative Davids, Senator Miller, to help get into the bonding bill. I personally went and testified in front of the Senate Bonding Committee for that. They got $2.5 million in bonding funding for that bridge. Month ago, we found out that we worked with them to get another $1.6 million to start building the trail from the bridge to the south, and ultimately to hopefully connect further into Houston County. So we're always looking for whatever the project is. We're in tune with all the different funding sources that are available within Minnesota, and then trying to go after the ones, bring them up to you guys' attention, bring them up to Jake and Casey, and being like, hey, this is available, but also having the realistic conversation of, here's a funding mechanism, but your odds of getting this probably aren't that good on this one. Having a real conversation about that, so that way we realize that resources to pursue funding are limited, right? Whether it's staff time, it's resources to have us do it, whatever that is. But again, I'll go back to the word practical. What's practical to pursue and what's practical not to pursue? Because there's a laundry list of things, and I can bring them in every week of, oh, here's another funding opportunity, here's another funding opportunity. It's really what's the most probable and economical to pursue to help you stretch it out as far as you can.
Have you guys had any luck with local street funding? Any avenues there?
We have. So we've worked through, we've had several projects that we've used the local road improvement plan projects and worked to secure funding for a number of communities. We've done one with Casson, one with Byron. We've got a project with La Crescent for next year for those local road improvement projects.
those are state and county roads within city limits.
No, local streets,
So they're local city streets.
local city streets.
Okay.
Yep,
Is it Walnut in the Crescent?
it is.
That's
Yep.
the other, we threw in for that one. We didn't do it.
Yep, so, and that's part of it, it's, you know, everybody here has had success, but you know, it's something that we serve Southeast Minnesota. We work in a lot of the communities in Southeast Minnesota. So we know the players, we know who at MnDOT, who at the Department of Health, who's at the MPCA, to start to know what types of avenues, what types of things do we need to work on within those funding opportunities what are some key things that we should be hitting on within there? And what's the strength of an application to help you get those funds when they're there? Because sometimes that's it. It's what piece do you need to add into it to make it more appealing of a project, not just for the community, but for the selection committee, if you will. That's right.
Tell us about a time you made a mistake or an engineering mistake in a project and what you do it correctly.
Well, the first thing that, as a philosophy that we have is that if we make a mistake, we talk about it. So when we've made mistakes, my first call is typically to the public works director. Hey, we've got a problem. Won't say that we haven't had them. We've had them along the way. And the first part of it is acknowledging that it's happened. We're never going to sweep it underneath the rug, try and cover it up. You know, that we want to be trusted partners with you guys. That's our goal, is that we want to be an extension of staff, that we know your staff, we know your council, and we're always working with them. And so when we have a problem, that's where we're going to start. And then we're going to talk about how do we remedy this problem. And sometimes we've got to bite the bullet and work extra to make it work through the issue. And that's usually the case, is that we're working for free to solve the problem, and we always take those as immediate. And I'll go back to the responsiveness, is that ideally though, I'm going to be the one calling you and telling you that we have a problem and a mistake, than you calling me. Is that we want to be on the proactive side of that. Is we have been on the proactive side when we've had issues. Is that when we find them, we acknowledge it, and then we find a solution and way to move forward.
The success of a street project comes down to the representative on the project. Law firms choose to have interns or inexperienced staff on site. What is your approach?
So we don't typically have used younger staff, but typically we have, we've actually got 2 guys that we just hired that came from the construction industry. They've got 15, 20 years of experience in the construction industry and doing observation. Whenever we have somebody that's younger or inexperienced, is that, so first off, we keep them close to home. And we're giving direct oversight over them on a regular basis. So that usually means they're checking in multiple times on the phone. Somebody is coming down to the site at least once or twice a week. By the way, that's something that we have found is that extremely helpful for everybody on a successful project, is that we want to make sure that we have the design engineer, the design team, or our overall construction services manager, that one of us is on site every week. We've had a lot of success doing that, but we just have, it works out really well, especially if we've got a couple projects going on. Where we go project to project to project, we talk to the construction observer, we talk to the contractor, we resolve issues that we can, or we know what issues we have out there to be solved. And then we have a public engagement part of that then too, of the follow-up. But go back to it is, we would not assign a first-year person to Caledonia. Is that we want to make sure that they have experience of doing that. Interns is not an appropriate place for construction observation work, especially on a reconstruction project. There are too many moving parts with the reconstruction project because, go back to maybe your previous question, Casey. We always have a perfect plan until we put the first scoop is removed from the ground, and then we tend to find issues along the way. And that's where that experienced person is there and able to help answer questions and effectively communicate back to the rest of our staff of how do we solve that. And that's where responsiveness goes to you guys. It also goes to ourselves too, is that Blake calls me, someone else calls me. I'm always doing what I can to answer that phone call and get back to them as soon as possible because we realize that Casey and Blake aren't calling me to chat about that it's 47 degrees out today. They're not calling to tell me that it's nice and sunny here in Caledonia on July 4th. We have a problem. And I've experienced that. My wife has seen it numerous times where my phone rings at 11, 12, 1 a.m. I see that it's a public works director and she goes, well, we'll see you tonight or whatever. She knows and I'm already putting on pants and boots as I'm heading out the door because A, I want you to call me, and B, we realize that when you call us, we need to respond.
As far as you guys' design fees and construction observation, do you guys offer a not to exceed option, or is it always going to be hourly?
We offer what's your expectation. So that's part of what we always want to have an upfront conversation on the scope and the expectation right out of the gate. So if we've got a street project, we want to have an honest conversation about A, what are we doing? What are we scoping out? What's the time expectation of you guys for us to be on site? So that we have that clear understanding of what's happening. And don't have any problems with sharing what our assumptions are for hours as we're sharing that together. So that way we do have a comfort level. If we want to go do a not to exceed fee, let's go there. But then we just got to hammer through what are the specifics and understanding the variables that go along with it. But we want to have an honest upfront conversation of like, hey, we're expecting that this is going to take 600 hours. This is going to take 800 hours. Here's how I got to this number. Was that the contractor told me it was going to take 10 weeks. I put 2 more weeks onto there. We're figuring that it's going to be 6 weeks of underground work where we want to be here most of the time. When we're doing street work, maybe we only be here 50% of the time. Whatever that expectation of us is, so that way we all feel comfortable with where those fees are. And by the way, if we see an issue as we're going through a project, we're monitoring that on a weekly basis of how projects are tracking. That if something's not going the way that we're tracking it, we're going to have a conversation with you guys at that point in time and not at the end of the job. So if 50% of the way through it, the contractor's been dragging his feet and hey, they're not getting the production that they were expecting to be. What do we want to do? Do we want to cut back on how much we're here? What's that expectation? But to have that conversation real time and not just blow through a budget and have that. And I think that's one thing that we always try and do is have that, set that fee. We know where it's at, whether it's on design or construction. And we understand the scope that all of us sitting here have the same understanding of what are we trying to accomplish with this.
Good guys? Bob? Amanda, anything?
Well, I did have, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
On your fee schedule, I don't see anything for someone that writes grants.
For what?
For someone that writes grants.
So we don't have a specific grant writer. All of us write grants. So, so some firms will have a very specific niche person that does that. We have felt we've been successful with not needing that niche person to do that. That we're the ones, the people that are working with you that understand your needs, and we have those conversations throughout our office of collaborating, trying to figure out which funding mechanism is it, how do we write this, but a lot of us are doing that work, and to be honest, It depends on each community. Okay? Some communities have us do the entire grant application. Okay? Other communities, depending on staff loading and things, are like, oh, if we can cover this one, we just need this technical piece from it. Or, hey, can I start it? And you guys kind of just review it and give me comments along with the technical pieces. We're fine with whatever arrangement we need to make work that fits your guys' needs, because we understand. And sometimes, I'll just pick on these two since they're sitting here. This month, Jake might have the time to do it. Next month, might not have the time to do it because something came up along the way. We can step in and fill that void, and then through our conversation that we have, we know where it's at to pick that up and move it forward.
Okay. John, could you describe the project you did in Spring Grove?
Yes, it's which one?
One picture, yeah, I don't.
Okay, the highway project?
Well, just describe.
Yeah, so in early on in my career, I think probably about 2009 or so, we started to have conversations with MnDOT about the highway reconstruction project going through Spring Grove. And so we started off having numerous conversations, and actually it was going to lead into another reverse question because it came around, but we knew all the players there. We started to engage them about what the city's needs were and what MnDOT's needs were. So at that point in time, there was original highway. The infrastructure, I think, was installed in the 30s or 40s. And it was like, okay, we need to replace this infrastructure before we reconstruct the highway. And so we talked to MnDOT. MnDOT chimed in and they were like, yep, we're going to reconstruct this thing. We want you to get your utilities done. And so we partnered with them to extend Spring Grove's dollar as far as they can and getting as much out of MnDOT to pay for the highway, because if the utilities go bad underneath the highway, you get to pay to fix the highway. In this case, with being proactive, city paid for the infrastructure underneath, MnDOT paid for their cost participation on the top end of it. And through that, we also had numerous public engagements. We went through a lengthy thing because the city was like, hey, this is our downtown. If we're going to do this, we're going to rip it up. They wanted to do it right. And everybody's right is different. Everybody's, and so that can be a challenging opportunity too for us to engage with the public to figure out what are we trying to do for pedestrian safety. We put in some very controversial bump outs along the highway through there. And to this day, I haven't heard any issues with any tractors meeting and can't fit through it. But I heard a lot of positive things from a pedestrian standpoint. It was a hot topic item. And that was a project that I still have. It brings me great joy because it's a struggle when we're working through it. It's a struggle to get through the design. It's a struggle to get through the public involvement portion of it. People are very emotional about things, and but when we see the end product and I look back at it, we constructed that in 2013. I drive through there. I was through there just last week, and seeing how it functions and it works. It's one of the reasons I come to work is that I want to make an impression on other people's lives, whether they know it or not. That's one of those that nobody knows that what we did with that, but everybody's impacted on it positively on a day-to-day basis.
We're good.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, guys. Thank you. Casey or Jake will get a hold of you. How's that sound?
Yeah, I was going to say, do you want us to wait around in case there's any questions afterwards?
Nope. Well, we have questions. Sound good, Jake?
Yep. All right. Thank you, guys.
Thanks. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Ready for you guys? So after my vote,
Trying to find it. Wavy bridges in that order. Why do they do that?
Thanks for being patient.
Absolutely problem.
I'm not as good at Tank is at this stuff. I'm like 10 minutes over that one. Sorry. Give you like 5 minutes, like introduce yourself, split yourself, maybe like 10 minutes worth of questions or like 35 minutes worth of questions. I don't know. We'll try and
We'll be here as long as you want us here. First, just a quick introduction. My name is Mark Davey, Davey Engineering Company. I'm president of Davey Engineering Company. This is Tim Holzer. He's kind of our marketing director. He's kind of the one who goes around the state. This is Carson Hackett. He's one of our engineers, and he does primarily kind of water, sewer, collection system type work. Although we do have him doing a little bit of everything. I'm going to kind of turn it over to Tim here for a general.
Yeah, so I'm sure most of you, if not all of you, are a little bit familiar with Davey Engineering. We've done some work in Caledonia in the past. I actually used to do quite a bit of work in Caledonia, and we love that opportunity again. But just a little bit about Davey. We've been in business for about 95 years now. We're based in La Crosse. He considered a small to mid-sized engineering firm that works primarily with small communities, much like Caledonia. We work the tri-state area, meaning Wisconsin, Minnesota, Iowa. We tend to specialize in streets, utilities, water, sewer, wastewater treatment, water supply. That's really kind of been our niche. Being a smaller family type company, Mark represents the fourth generation of Davies. I know there's been talk in the past about maybe opening up offices in other locations throughout the state, but and I think Mark and his father have felt having one office, we have good control on things and easier to manage the office and its personnel. And I think that's one of the benefits from your perspective. If I was looking at on your side, if you have a question, you can call me, you can call Mark, you can call Carson. We're all going to be in the same location. So I think there's benefit for both you and for us as an engineering team to be able to communicate with each other on a readily accessible basis. So yeah, just kind of a quick intro of Davey, and we'd love the opportunity to work with you folks again. We're doing your lab work. We have been for many years, so there is a connection there, and we feel that brings some value to your staff as well, having resources both in the lab and the engineering. Our guys are talking to our lab staff all the time, so we feel there's some value with that as well. So with that, I guess I'll turn it over to Mark or whoever wants to.
Well, that, in a nutshell, I guess the only thing I'd add is that, because of where we're located in La Crosse, we do serve a tri-state area, but we are very intentional about keeping about a 200-mile radius around there, and that's where we want to focus on our clients. And so our client base is primarily from 50 residents to about 3,000 residents to 5,000 residents. So we don't work for the large communities. We're not a corporation. We're kind of the hometown engineers working for hometowns. We understand though, in working with some of the smaller communities, that sometimes that takes a little bit more. You don't have a finance person on staff to help you get funding. You don't have a grant writer on staff to help write grants. You have great people, obviously. So we wear a lot of hats when we come into town, but we also, we have other partners in the industry that do some very specialized knowledge that you need. We can hook you up with that as well. But again, we primarily specialize in working with smaller communities. We'd rather work with a community the size of Caledonia than La Crosse, for example, because again, they have professionals on staff, and we provide probably a different level of service that La Crosse wouldn't appreciate, because we probably would tend to do more than they want us to. But that's enough of an introduction for us. Why don't you get into some questions for us? And
you kind of answered the first one, but we'll do it again. How's that sound? What sets you apart from other firms as the best choice for the city of Caledonia?
Again, what Tim said and what I said, I would just reiterate that. The fact is we've chosen to remain a small and mid-sized firm for very specific reasons, because we can control the quality of our work. And quite honestly, Mike said, if you want to open another office, go ahead and move, but there's no point in two of us being here, and I didn't want to move. So we decided to kind of expand our operation in La Crosse a little bit and just make sure that we're providing good quality work in a nice area around here. You know, we're not out to try to push a corporate line. We're out there to make a living and have fun while we do it. We, again, specializing in communities around the same size as Caledonia. We're not out there trying to chase big clients. We're not going to provide the best dog and pony show. You can probably see by our proposal is it's just not something that we specialize in. So we don't have a graphic designer. It's Tim putting this stuff together on his computer. So it, you know, we have there's advantages and disadvantages. You're not paying for marketing either. So it's you know, we do think that we're a good fit. We have a ton of history with Caledonia. Worked on a lot of the infrastructure here over the years. I think when we were talking to Jake is I think we've been the engineer for almost every community within a 200-mile radius at one point or the other. And we used to go further out. My grandfather was aggressive about getting work. We worked in Park Falls up until about 10 years ago. Let me tell you, a 4-hour drive going to a meeting and then coming back, that's a brutal evening. So, especially that drive. But no, we've kind of limited our geographical area since then. And, you know, we think we're a good fit.
Cost effectiveness is the primary reason for this search. How does your firm prioritize cost effectiveness for municipalities?
Well, I mean, so that is what an engineer's job is to find the most economic, cost-effective solution to your problem, okay? So our job is, from a facility standpoint, is to come in and say, here are what your options are. This is the cost, and this is the pros and cons of all those options of what we're going to do. Now, certainly, we have opinions, we have ideas as to how things should be done, but most of that is driven by state statute, right? But it's also driven by long-standing experience as well. And even, you know, even working in, we were talking about the soils down in McGregor, Iowa, that we've been going through very recently when we work down there. And you get familiarity with the region, and in that area, we don't have to put in, for instance, as much backfill. You get up in Arcadia, which is kind of swampy, you got to put in a ton of breaker run and backfill and that kind of stuff. So cost effectiveness is all about providing the product that the client wants. You know, certainly you can over-engineer a project, and we've seen it. We run into it in a lot of different areas. And our job is to work with the community to kind of get the product that you want as the end, and to tell you what the pros and cons of that project. One thing I think that separates us a little bit is that we don't charge for some of our services. And what I mean by that is we only usually charge if there's an active project going on. So if Jake calls or Casey calls with a quick question, you're not going to get a bill. If it's a phone call and just an update on what's going on out there, we don't typically charge for evening meetings unless they require an obscene amount of prep. To us, evening meetings are an opportunity for us to meet with basically the people running the community. So we don't charge for those evening meetings. So, you know, we try to be as cost effective as we can. We certainly don't have a long drive for us to get here. I do think that there's advantages from that perspective as well.
How does your firm advocate for and pursue funding for municipal projects?
Keeping up to date on funding, which is very difficult now. We're not 100% sure where the funding is going to be coming from in the next few years, but we send all of our staff to training. We're involved in a couple of CDBGs right now. You're doing, you know, down in McGregor, we have a CDBG down there. We have significant DOT funding down there. Working with rural development in about 3-4 different places. You know, we'll work with all the funding agencies at one point or the other. Our engineers are expected to be almost an expert in the funding realm. I want our engineers to be able to be knowledgeable when they come to meetings and explain the funding. We don't have a funding specialist on staff. We have somebody who kind of helps with spreadsheets and kind of gets things set up, but the engineers are running the job and making sure that things stay within budget. And we feel that allows the person who designed the project and has been involved from the project from the very beginning to have an effect on where that project goes. And we think that that can have an effect on change orders and stuff like that, because when the engineer is the one with the budget in front of them, they're going to be a lot less reluctant to come in and say, hey guys, we think you got to do this change, right? Because they're in charge of the budget too, and they got to justify it in front of you. So, and so we do think that we're as familiar with funding agencies as anybody. I mean, we're working in Iowa, Minnesota, Wisconsin. We probably, I'd say, 80% of our municipal jobs are publicly funded in some way. So working on funding is something we do on a day-to-day basis.
Tell us about a time that you would have maybe made an engineering mistake on a project and what you did to correct it.
Tricky one. No, I mean, we've made plenty of mistakes, and we paid for it. So we have had professional liability insurance since professional liability insurance was started in 1985. My father was actually on one of the committees to help start it. We've never had a claim on our insurance, and that's because we work with clients and we work with the community to solve the problem in a satisfactory way to everybody. Meaning we don't want lawyers involved in it because that only complicates things. I'm required to notify my insurance company when something happens. And I've had to do it about 5 times over the past 15 years as to, we have a situation where we put an outlet manhole near a bar restaurant, and unfortunately there's septic waste getting into there, so it has an odor to it. And so we've been working with them to try to fix that problem and try to do that. And our advice is that, hey, we designed it, we'll call it to the standard of care, but there are better ways to do this. Here are some options to solve that problem. And we're working with the community to try to do that. Typically what we'll do on any project like that is the engineering starts as, hey, we made a mistake here, we're going to help you solve the problem, you're not going to get a bill for it. And that's as far as we've ever had to go in the past. We've never had a claim on our insurance. I've paid for a couple curb and gutter things that we've screwed up, but I think that's a cost of doing business. I really do. You send a new surveyor out or surveying tech out to put in some curb and gutter, and they're off by 1/10, and the contractor comes out and says this doesn't look right, and then it's got to be torn out. So we replace it at our cost. So, it is something that's happened again, but like I said, is we've never had anything significant enough that we've ever had any kind of insurance claim with our insurance.
The success of a street project comes down to the representative on the project. A lot of firms choose to have interns or inexperienced staff on the site. What is your approach?
I'm trying to think of our collective engineering technician experience, but it's got to be 20 plus years on average. Mike Hastreiter, who's still with us, has got about 40 years in the industry. Kurt Marks has got probably over 30 now. And we just hired David, who's probably about 3 years under his belt now. He's not been the primary inspector on many projects. We've had either Kurt or Mike coming in and help out a little bit for that. We do occasionally put entry-level engineers out on projects if they're smaller ones like that to get a little bit of experience, but they're usually backup to somebody. But no, I think that we have a very experienced engineering technician staff.
Do you guys ever do any kind of a not to exceed cost on engineering a project or the construction and observation?
Any what?
Like a not to exceed cost? Yeah.
So on construction, typically we don't. We typically do hourly because 2 reasons. One is that we work with some communities where they have a lot of staff that's on site. And quite honestly, if, for instance, putting in water main 6 feet of cover, fairly simple, there's no valves or anything like that. There's no reason if there's somebody experienced on site for me to send, my guy can go home, right? And we try to be flexible with what the community needs and what they do with that. But we typically like to work hourly on construction projects only because construction projects are too unpredictable. You never know exactly what's going to happen. And in order for me to put in a lump sum on that, I think I would overestimate how much it would take. And nobody ever wants me to give money back.
How about on the design side?
We've done quite a few lump sum jobs on the design side. It is a little bit more difficult to do that on some of the utility work projects, just because a lot of the utility work projects is figuring out what the scope of work is. A significant portion of that is, right? So for example, if it's replacement of streets, the first thing you need to do is well, wait a second, what's the condition of the sewer underneath the street? Because you'd be foolish to replace the street, the sewer needs to be replaced. Same thing with the water. So we would have to evaluate that. And sometimes just that evaluation becomes a significant portion of the project, typically in a preliminary phase. But we do lump sums for those as well every once in a while too. So it really depends on how well the scope is defined on a project and whether we feel we can do that.
Anybody got any questions?
None for me.
No? Thank you, guys. We appreciate you coming over.
Great, absolutely. Thank you.
We're gonna have a discussion, and one of these guys will probably talk to you in a day or so. Jake, Casey?
Yeah, we'll be.
Or next week? Yeah, because we gotta do that other committee. don't we?
Yeah, most likely the council won't be able to make a decision until April 14th. But we will be in touch before then.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a great night.
Appreciate you guys. Maybe you can charge
Thank you.
This is a quick thing, I think.
Thank you.
Well, it does.
No, I'm not sure yet. I sent a message to Matt. They never got back to me. With the family situation, I think he's out of the COVID actually, so. But otherwise, that's pretty soon. But I'll have an answer for you before the end of the week. I'll answer you tomorrow, probably.
So Jake, we're gonna defer this to the committee.
Yeah, my recommendation would be that, the way I've done this in the past is basically you have the entire council just kind of funnel their feelings towards that committee. And basically with this, these are a little simpler. You just kind of suggest your first choice to that group, and then, that committee, that general government committee will meet with Casey and I will go a little bit more in depth on that. Yeah, just with the one with the fourth firm not being here, you'd not be wise to make a decision right now.
Yes, sir.
I'm curious, by changing engineers like that, is that going to affect the WW?
No, different engineers.
Oh, okay.
That, I don't know how that decision was made here, but that's just a different firm entirely. I don't know.
We were kind of between city engineers at that time. Past administrator had some pretty strong feelings about getting a firm we could just stick with for that project. And I guess the future, whether we stay with those guys for wastewater plant needs or have whatever new city engineer take care of that. Something we'll have to decide in the future.
Gotcha.
But so far, everyone's firms are pretty well qualified to take over any rehabs or additions. Hopefully, we don't get anything for a long time, but so we've got a little time on that.
Gotcha. So do we need to do anything with this then? We're good to go? We can go to B?
Yep.
Ordinance adoption 2025-02, regulating cannabis products.
Okay, so in front of you is ordinance 2025-02. This is almost identical to when it was ordinance 2023-01. We have a few statutorily required changes, or rather one statutorily required changes, and then so that change is that we are going from issuing THC licenses to now we're going to be issuing THC registration, because we do not handle the licensing authority anymore. The state does, but we have a role in this process where the state, once they've received an application and they want to grant it, the last step is to check with the city, with the licensor, with the local authority on the zoning, and then on making sure that they've paid any fees, things like that. And so this is a lot of talking just to say that we are not allowed to charge $1,000 anymore. We can only charge $500 at the maximum. So that's the one change. And then the second is because this just doesn't work in reality. We used to have a line that you had to maintain a tobacco license in order to get a THC license. That was in the model ordinance, and we just didn't question it. But we have one active hemp license out on the highway that doesn't have a tobacco license, and everyone is sell tobacco. So it's just at odds. So this is a very simple update. And nobody came to the public hearing, nobody spoke about the ordinance. So we have no reason to believe there's any controversy or rather any negative feedback or anything like that.
What is the state charge for license?
It
That very
varies, yeah. They had, but the only one I know off the top of my head is the social equity one was capped at around 250, I think. But then I don't know what those the larger operations, I don't know what they'll get for a licensing fee out of that.
So the state made us reduce the registration fee.
Yeah. I mean, why we started with the 1,000 because that's where our liquor license starts at, and the state and the League of Minnesota Cities told us to treat this like a liquor license, which we did. And this ordinance, I think, on its own before this complication, this ordinance was, I think, perfectly structured for this system, basically. And so, yeah, we just have to make some updates for some changes. Decent chance there's going to be more changes this summer. It sounds like this law has kind of been targeted, but if they can't get anything done at the State House, then this one won't need to change. So.
We just need a motion to adopt.
Yeah, I got one more question. I guess who on the police department is responsible for training?
As far as the compliance and all that?
Yeah.
That, I believe, right now is our drug recognition officer, Nick Pearson. He's the one that's got the most, I guess, most state training for drugs.
So has he got to do any extra training?
No, because the only thing they have to do right now are the compliance checks, and that's the exact same process. As far as I understand, the entire landscape may change a little bit once there actually is active businesses that are collecting the tax that then can get distributed to cities. And I know that a lot of that is education funding. And so kind of expecting that as the account gets funded and that money makes its way to us, we'll have some more money for training and things like that. And really flesh this out a little bit because we don't know what any of this is going to look like until they actually get a lottery done and get some licenses out the door, which may or may not be in May or June of this year. But I'm not a lawyer, but I don't think the lottery is going to be a very simple path forward.
I'll make a motion to approve ordinance 2025-02.
I'll second that.
Any more discussion? You want this done by roll call, Jake?
Yeah, that should say this vote should be taken by roll call, sorry. So, John?
I approve.
Aye.
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 Is that how we do that?
You can
No.
switch, you can say, you could go down the row and you could say your name, but
Okay.
I know everybody in this room, so.
All right, we're good.
You got some-
C is approved sewer department purchases.
Yep, there should be two sheets there. One says utility logic on the top, and the other one says BSG.
That's the ones that were gave to us tonight.
The utility logic, what we've got here is a inspection camera. It's something we've talked about owning for a lot of years. And, we end up finding ourselves calling somebody all the time, and it's usually $200 to $400 easily. Whether it's a sewer lateral or a storm sewer or just sewer main, having that ability to basically take a quick peek inside a lot of these things and help our judgment on what we need to do for a repair, or if it's a plug or something that we actually would need to call somebody to come manage for us. So something that'll pay for itself relatively quick. I mean, we typically call for a camera. It depends on the year and the preference, but
I think anywhere between 8 and 15 times a year at a couple $100 a piece. So, high quality piece of equipment, comes with a great warranty on it. We have utility locators of the same brand. So the nice thing is there's a head on this inspection camera that just saves us everything down a pipe somewhere. We have no idea where it goes. A utility locator will be able to trace it and find where that head. I mean, you get stuck with a space or a lodge or something like that. So we have options of other brands out there that are cheaper, but you're not going to get the longevity out of more of the service with a company like this.
100 feet's enough.
Yeah, so manholes are typically 300 feet apart. So we can go up and down stream. You know, some of them are a little longer, but by the time we're pushing 200 feet out manually, it's going to be pretty good pushing. You know, so.
You push it manually?
Yeah, yep, it's all on a reel and manual push. So anything that would come with a tractor to cross through, we're going to talk $50,000 or so. So trying to be you know, as efficient as we can with a good piece of equipment. So.
Are you able to guide it at all when it's going through?
They have some heads and attachments that can go on them depending on the pipe size, so that they don't curl up or have the eyeball in a weird location. They'll have a self-leveling eye on this as well. So just say you're in a bigger pipe and the biggest fitting we got for the end is smaller. As you get pushed out farther, if that thing snakes uphill at all, that eye is going to level and get a good view of what we're looking at. So also a big difference from cheap cameras. Mm-hmm. Second sheet is actually more of a water department item. So what it is basically a Milwaukee handheld pipe threader, and then the rest of the parts are attachments. And its purpose would be two things for the water department: exercising valves out in the street, and then also the fire hydrants. You know, every year we flush it at least once a year, sometimes twice, depending on if it's an area that gets a buildup. But it does get to be a lot of stuff to turn. You know, this will help us go out and exercise our valves to extend the life of them. We've got a lot of old valves in town. Some of them we still are not doing exercise because we will cause ourselves some leaks. But anything that's, you know, been put in the ground in the last probably 30 years, it's a best practice for us to be doing that. And, you know, manually, some of these things are real very bad, so it's kind of employee safety thing as well. Yeah, the very top one for the $650, those are actually some curb box parts, so we do not need that. So that'll drop that total to $42, $48, $98 on that BSG quote. Again, another piece of equipment we've kind of just put off buying, and something we should have probably had years ago.
How big a pipe can you go to?
I mean, this one here will be turning gate valves in the street. You know,
Oh, I thought it was a pipe threader.
Yeah, it is. It is. That's a confusing part. So it is a pipe threader. I think it'll, you know, if we use it for the dual purpose of pipe threading, I think we can look to like a 2-inch. Nothing real big, and we do some small stuff here and there, so it will be used there once in a while. But what we ended up with here is there is a specific tool you could purchase for a lot more money than this. This company got smart and they produced an attachment for a Milwaukee pipe threader, and it's quite a bit cheaper. So it's kind of a win-win. You know, dual purpose and it saves us a couple $1,000.
That was my research found me. I went through the exact same thing. I said, well, this is pipe threader. I'm going to go look for the hydrant wrench online, and they got one, and it's 3 times as much. So
yeah, quite a difference actually.
Where's the funding coming from?
Right out of each department. They're enterprise funds. We, I guess, have not had budget meetings for these. We typically don't. There's always money allotted.
So it's in the budget.
Essentially, yeah. I mean, every year we allot certain amounts of money for labor services, for tools, parts, you know, replacements of the field.
Yeah, but we're talking $15,000 here.
Yep.
But no general funding for that.
Okay.
So the sewer will pay for the camera, and water will pay for the exerciser, which are the pipe, converted pipe threader.
Okay.
And then we almost 3 years ago, we bought a locator for from the Utility Logic, and as far as I know, those guys like it. Well, I mean, we used to contract for the mapping services, locating and all that, and that one tool took that away. And so the idea is that we won't have to contract for television services anymore.
Is this something similar to what Chase has got? Only a bigger scale like
It's
this?
got both. This small one here, yeah, we can do a lot of stuff with this, but not, let's just say we're gonna televise all the city sewer mains, for infrastructure management. We're still gonna have to bring in, somebody like Chase Munson, or actually, they sold that one, that's, RCT, cheaper ones out now. There's, a crew out of Hudson, Iowa, I mean, they're all over, that we bring somebody big in. We've got, I think 99% of the whole town is cambered anywhere from 2006 up till 2017. So we do have video record, of course, all that stuff's being edited.
Yeah, I was wondering about that. If you do a camera search, does it take a video that you can save?
Yep, this, I believe it's a USB or a thumb drive, some of this that we can record too, so. Definitely not a dedicated camera for, doing miles and miles of city sewer, but, certainly, will pay for itself pretty quickly in a matter of a couple of years.
I'll make a motion to approve sewer department purchases.
I'll second that.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Overtime report. Pay period March 3rd to 16th.
Didn't get the snow, did it?
No, that'll be the next one. Just like Tank always says, the next one's gonna be the big one. This is nothing.
Okay. Let's see what's happening there.
You don't gotta do anything with that?
No, sir.
Old business, none. Next regular council meeting is scheduled for Monday, April 14th at 6 p.m. And I'll end the meeting. I asked Jake the same question you did today. I'm like, why?
Yeah.
Is he doing?